What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 114 of the Finale podcast. Today I'm joined by Chris to preview the Super Bowl. Chris, of course, as I mentioned in his last podcast appearance, is an Eagles fan. So, as we know, Eagles are in the Super Bowl. Chris is, of course, pretty excited. But, Chris, a few questions I have for you. But before we get into all of that, where's your emotional, mentality at right now
going into my mindset
game?
right now?
Yeah.
I would say my mindset right now is I've been doing a lot of things not to be focused on the game, but when it comes to the game, in prior Super Bowls, I would be more nervous leading up to it. But since I've kind of been in this scenario before, it'll be once the ball's kicked off, I'll be the nerves will settle in definitely then. But yeah, I'm pretty excited and nervous. It's a good combination of both. Yeah, we're here in the Super Bowl, 59 against the Kansas City Chiefs, looking for a three-peat. It's gonna be a great game. Two great teams going at it.
Right. Where do you plan to watch the game at? Obviously, we're here in Arizona.
Yeah, there's this Eagles bar actually in Scottsdale. It's called Rock Bar,
Okay.
and I've been there 3 times in the past year. And it's my go-to spot. It's ran by an Eagles fan, and yeah, every Sunday he'll open up the bar. He'll have all the fans pour in. They have reserved tables. For me, I just go there and stand the whole time. Kind of like an Xfinity Live feel back in Philadelphia. But yeah, that's usually my go-to spot for the game. So I'll be there watching it.
Okay. All right. Well, let's get into some of these questions. So,
Sure.
first one, just want to get your thoughts on these few playoff games the Eagles have played: Packers,
Yes.
Rams, Commanders. What are your thoughts on how they've performed in all these games?
If I had to evaluate them, I would say my overall summary is that the defense really stepped up in a lot of them. Holding the Packers to 10 points. The Packers did have more total yards. I thought was a huge factor in that game. You could obviously tell the Eagles starters were rusty having that week off beforehand, and the defense just has done their job all year long. Zach Bond really stepped up for this game. He forced 2 turnovers. Their ability to force fumbles has really helped him out in each game. But yeah, for the Packers game, I would say it was a defensive slugfest because the offense again was really slow, didn't really show out much, but they were just able to control time possession. I thought in the second half, which was a really big indicator for that success. Second game was a blizzard, so that was it was a little bit challenging. You had to establish the run, and the Eagles all year long have proven that they can run the ball super efficiently. Saquon Barkley. On a historic trajectory so far for the Super Bowl or for the Super Bowl run. I think he's 169 yards, 167 yards away from the all-time record by John Riggins if he were to break that this upcoming game. But yeah, that game, it was just getting him the ball, getting stops on defense, wasting a lot of time, and really just being able to dominate in the trenches. Although I will say of the 3 games, that was definitely the closest you saw them kind of bend a little bit. In that game, Matthew Stafford was able to take advantage of Vic Fangio's defense, which is a lot of it's bend but don't break. And it bended for a while, but then it eventually broke. But I can't complain too much about the defense. They've been electric all year long. They got to Stafford twice, forcing 2 forced fumbles, which I thought was a big factor in that. But like the first denominator in those 2 games was that the offense it was taking them a while to get going. And I thought you saw in the Washington game, entire game, the offense really was able to hit the ground running. And Hurts, I think he really stepped up passing. I think he showed that the first 2 weeks. Either I would say that some of the routes the receivers ran were questionable by Kellen Moore, but it didn't look fluid. I would say the past week though, getting AJ Brown more involved was huge, and just kind of having more of a free flowing offense. Really, I mean, they're able to dominate teams on the ground, but if they're able to pass the ball really well, that's when they'll start scoring points. And you saw that when they put up 55 on Washington.
Yeah. So, of course, Saquon's had a really good playoffs. What's your level of confidence as you guys go up against this Chiefs defense, who in this playoff
Yeah.
run, especially haven't allowed a 100-yard rusher yet? Of course, Saquon is unlike any rusher that they've faced, but
Yeah.
what are your expectations for how the Eagles offense should balance the pass game and the run game in this one?
I think you first, as we've seen throughout the season, you have to try and establish the run first. I mean, that is their bread and butter with their the offense, just the way the offensive line plays, just getting guys out in front, opening up spaces, and getting Saquon just running down the middle to tire out the defense. I think that's important to be able to establish the run. If I was looking at last week, really the only time I've seen and Chiefs run defense is very good. The only time I really saw them get exploited though, I saw James Cook last week really take advantage of the Chiefs, which surprised me a bit. So that gives me some confidence that the Eagles will be able to run the ball first tomorrow. Passing, I believe, will be more of a necessity. You'll see it more on third downs, but I expect it to be a pretty heavily run first game tomorrow. Just playing towards their strengths. And yeah, I mean, if need be, they will get the pass game going, or they will attempt to get the pass game going. And again, you have to account for Steve Spagnuolo though. He's been in a situation plenty of times. He's seen every single offense known to man as a defensive coordinator, so you definitely have to account for that. But I would say I would try to run the ball about 60 to 70% of the game tomorrow.
Hmm. Okay, moving on. So just saw news that Brandon Graham is going to be
Yeah,
activated for the Super Bowl. Uh, who knows what kind of role he plays in this, but what are your
yeah.
thoughts on, him, of course, being
For me,
activated,
I
which could
he's
potentially
been
be his last game of his career?
yeah. So for me, he holds a special spot in my heart. He was drafted when I was in fourth grade. I was not 9 years old. I remember when he was drafted in the first round. A lot of people questioned if that was the right pick or not, if they should have picked Earl Thomas. It took him a few years to get going, but really by the mid part of his career, he became a fan favorite. Just really producing kind of just a lot of the iconic moments we've had. Obviously, the Super Bowl strip sack. He's kind of embodied the city of Philadelphia. He's embodied working really hard and getting to the point where he's at. And so for him to come back in this game, which per reports it will be his last game of his career, I think is sensational. If you tear your tricep in December and then 2 months later you're in the Super Bowl, I think that just shows you the will of his strength and that he'd risk everything in his body to play and benefit this team. How I think it will affect it is the pass rush has actually gotten better with him out. If you see Nolan Smith has really started to break out, last year, really slow. Just kind of not the season we're expecting. And then this year, obviously with the new defensive scheme, he's really stepped up. He's had about 4 sacks in the last 5 games, has been a huge factor there. Josh Sweat also potentially playing his last game with the Eagles. He will. I expect him to get to the quarterback and really do a number. But I expect BG kind of to be there more for moral support. I don't know if he will be getting a lot of reps because, I mean, it's been a while since he last played, and you're going against the Kansas City Chiefs. So I expect him to kind of be there just to pump the guys up and just keep the spirits high. If he does play, that'd be great. But if it's a close game, I do think Nolan Smith and Josh Sweat will be the ones out there.
Hmm. One of your defensive players, Jalen Carter, is one of a few guys on the Eagles right now battling illness. We've heard some
Yeah.
reports about that. What's your level of concern with those reports?
I would say for me, it's a bit tepid because I remember prior to Super Bowl 52, Nelson Aguilar was actually dealing with an illness beforehand. And I guess that just happens when you're when the team's all together, they're traveling here and there for Super Bowl week. It's gonna tend to bounce around. If he was still like feeling symptoms going into the game, I would be nervous. But as of right now, I'm not too nervous. It happens. I know he had flu-like symptoms, but he's a pretty strong guy. Expect him to play and just kind of help out the team, just being himself, being a dominant force. So yeah, I'm not too concerned. No.
Okay. And then, of course, yesterday or a couple of days ago, we found out about the NFL award winners. Of course, a
Yeah.
couple of you guys are affected. Saquon Barkley, Kenyon Mitchell didn't come out with his defensive rookie of the
Yeah.
year. But starting off with Saquon, how would you summarize year one of the Saquon Barkley era in Philadelphia?
I would say fairy tale. It was just amazing to see him from the very first game against Green Bay have a unbelievable receiving touchdown, just running so freely, which you just did not see when he was on the Giants, kind of relying on such a great O-line, having him break tackles, jumping over guys. It's probably the most exhilarating running back I've ever seen, and I've seen LaShawn McCoy play. But yeah, it was a it was, I would say, a fairy tale season for him. Just every game, you're just expecting him to get 120, 130 yards. Like how much more can he impress with me? He's scoring touchdowns for his play of the game. He's breaking out 80-yard touchdowns, 75-yard touchdowns in the snow, doing the air guitar, getting me super hyped. So I would say, yeah, it's been an absolute fairy tale of a season. 2,000 yards, a very exclusive club. Only 9 other running backs have accomplished that. Definitely well deserving of Offensive Player of the Year. I know Jamar Chase is pretty close. He had the Triple Crown. Any other year he would have won, but I guess when you rush for 2,000 yards, you deserve the award. And it was an absolute treat to watch him this year. And I'm very excited to watch him tomorrow night.
Yeah, and even as a neutral, like I grew up in Minnesota watching Adrian Peterson, and when I look at all
Yeah,
these breakout runs where Saquon just gets loose and you're just kind of waiting on when it's going to come because it happens so often, it reminds me so much of Adrian
yeah,
Peterson and his 2012 MVP season where you were just waiting on those breakout runs. And yeah, Saquon has definitely had a huge impact on what you guys are accomplishing so far, of course, in the playoffs and this year in general. But
yeah.
going over to, were you going to make a comment?
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, and what's just so amazing about Saquon is just not only his ability to find the open holes and just burst through them, it's his ability to make defenders miss, I think, which is what really makes him special because you've seen Eagles running backs in the prior years, DeAndre Swift, who had his career year last year, but kind of just was not able to kind of show his explosiveness really and being able to break tackles and just being able to hit the right holes. And when you get the perfect running back, a great running back who obviously was not able to showcase his entire arsenal when he was with the Giants, just seeing him being able to do that with the Eagles is not only great for Eagles fans, but it's just I'm happy for Saquon that he finally has this as well.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like I said, man, he's having a spectacular
Yeah,
season. So, on the other side of the ball, of course, Kenyon Mitchell was up for Defensive Rookie of the Year that ended up going
yeah,
to Jared Verse, who had a sensational rookie year as well with the
unbelievable
Rams.
year.
So,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that? Do you think he should have won that award, and just overall thoughts on his first season with the Eagles?
Yeah, I would say his first season with the Eagles was again a very remarkably good season. When we drafted him, though, we knew he was going to be playing right away. We knew he had to jump in and uh, be on the other side of Slay, really taking over for Bradbury. He was just locking down receivers every week. And if you were to ask most Eagles fans, yeah, they would say Quinyon Mitchell should have won Rookie of the Year and whatnot. I would say the lack of him getting an interception really played a factor into that. If you see for Patrick Surtain, who won Defensive Player of the Year, he had 4 picks. Obviously, that's not the entire indicator. They go off of advanced stats a lot. But for a majority of fans and voters, they kind of look at the individual statistics as well, which again, he had no interceptions regular season. He's had 2 in the postseason. But for me, watching him lock down receivers every week is an absolute treat. He's been everything plus one. Really, him and Cooper have. It's not they're not even playing like rookies right now. I mean, they're going out there locking down receivers, whether that's in man coverage, zone coverage, and yeah, he's been super. He's been really good. Would he have been my pick? Probably, but I would also have to say Jared Verse kind of just filling in that gap that Aaron Donald left when he retired. I think there's just as good of an argument for him as well. And even if you go out of the greatness he had in the regular season, he was talking a lot of trash before he played the Eagles, talking about the fans, talking about just season going there and just wreak havoc. They did lose that game, but I will say this: he gained my respect that game. I mean, he had 3 sacks. He proved to be an absolute just beast the entire game. I have no problem from my biased point of view. Yes, I would pick Quinyon Mitchell, but from an unbiased point of view, I can see either one of them being defensive player or defensive rookie of the year, and definitely Jared Verse is well deserving of that award.
Hmm. And as somebody who is watching the Eagles every single week, of course, you're seeing the reasons you guys are winning more so than just like the headline players that everybody else kind of looks at. So with that, like I was curious, who do you think would be the unsung hero of this 2024-25 Eagles team that, maybe a bunch of people aren't really recognizing?
Yeah, for me, it would be Mekhi Becton, offensive guard. I'm a former offensive lineman, so I tend to focus on the offensive line as well. Philadelphia for the last 5, 10 years have had a really high-profile offensive line and big names like Jason Kelsey, Lane Johnson. Landon Dickerson as of recently, and before that, Jason Peters. Like just like the legacy of um, offensive linemen who found success with the team. Large credit to Jeff Stoutland. But when they signed Mekhi Becton, not many people thought he'd be a starter. They thought Tyler Steen would be starting over him. They had gotten him. He never really panned out for the Jets as a tackle. Uh, Jeff Stoutland really kind of worked with him over the offseason, had him transition into guard. And in my opinion, when I watch Saquon break out these big runs, he's able to just lead the way, have the lead blocker, gets Saquon out into transition. And he's been an absolute unsung hero, I would say. Him and Cam Jurgens, both of them, Cam Jurgens stepping up for Jason Kelsey after, retiring, being just the staple of the Eagles for the past 13 years at center. Cam Jurgens has came in and has been much just as good. There's barely been any drop off. The interior offensive line, in my opinion, would be the unsung hero offensively, and then defensively. It's been pretty well covered all year round with Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell, Darius Slay, C.J. Gardner-Johnson. I think from outside the Eagles fan base perspective, has had a massive impact. Eagles fans know he's had a massive impact, but outside of the NFL, it's not as well known. They just, kind of view him as like a trash talker and really not just like a clown, really. But he's proven to be a key piece of the Eagles. A huge reason we're back in the Super Bowl is because he brings that mentality. He brings that toughness. He brings his ability to hawk the ball, get in opponents' heads. That helped them make the Super Bowl 2 years ago. You saw last year, they did not have that. They were rotating safeties, and it just, it kind of lost that edge. Come back to this year, and you have C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and it looks like a completely revamped defense. Obviously, you have to credit Vic Fangio as well. But for the players that kind of go under the radar, I would say C.J. Gardner-Johnson on defense, and then offensively, Mekhi Becton would be my pick, who's also a free agent after this year, to be determined if he returns or not.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you mentioned Vic Fangio. So, of course, another year of new coordinators. Last year, of course, you guys had completely different coordinators on both sides of the ball. Let both of them go after that second half collapse in the season, losing first round of the playoffs. What have those two guys, Kellen Moore, Vic Fangio, what have they brought to the Eagles organization that is the biggest difference from last year?
Well, yeah, I think with defensive coordinator, I'm going to start off with Fangio. Fangio brings stability. He brings a pedigree, and he brings the scheme that the Eagles have been trying to perfect over the last 10 years. You've seen it once right after the Chip Kelly era in 2016. They got Jim Schwartz. He had that wide nine, bend but don't break defense. He relied on that man-to-man coverage that just was really to prevent the big plays from happening. And it was tweaked at certain time periods. It was really exploited. Our secondary was really always a liability, I would say, from 2016 through 2023. But once Fangio comes back, or once Fangio was hired, it's been a complete turnaround. And the concerns I had about the secondary getting burned deep are no more. And he knows that scheme because Sean Desai tried it last year, did not have much success. Obviously, the personnel is a lot different. That plays a huge role. But just in the way that Fangio is able to adjust throughout the game, I think has been really key. Obviously, he's been in the league for 24 years. He's been a defensive coordinator for 20 years. And he's always headlined, these great defenses. And he took over a unit that was really struggling last year. Giving up at the end, you just saw the roof come down on the defense last year. And, they were 30th, 32nd, I believe, in most rankings. And this year they've moved up to the best defense in the league. It's been absolutely uncanny. And I'm glad to know Vic Fangio will not be leaving because the prior two defensive coordinators were hired away. Jonathan Gannon went to the Cardinals, and then obviously Sean Desai was fired midseason. They brought in Matt Patricia. So I'd say stability is the most important key. Getting Fangio to have these guys for the foreseeable future. He has 3 more years left in his contract. I don't think he's leaving. For Kellen Moore, it's going to be tough for Hurts because Jalen Hurts has had a different offensive coordinator almost every year in his career, actually every season in his career with the Eagles. And you're losing a play caller who has maximized his abilities. At times, it does look clunky. but I think he's made the best of what we have to work with at times, especially running the ball. I love when Hurts will go in I formation, which I did not see much of last year, handing off to Saquon, a lot of these RPOs. I think he's what Hurts looks more like what he did 2 years ago than what he did last year, and he's just playing very turnover free ball, has been a huge portion in our success as well. Even when games we don't score offensively, we're not able to turn the ball, we can kick the ball down the field and give them poor field position. Losing Kellen Moore, I think, will hurt to the Saints. Obviously, he's being hired, but he's meant a lot to this team. He's taken a lot of pressure off Nick Sirianni from certain times of play calling, as you saw earlier on in the year. I believe Sirianni was he was kind of dabbling in calling. He was kind of overseeing what his play calling was during the game. And I think at one point, I think it was week 4, week 5, he was like, "All right, Kellen, you have full control of the playbook." Once he gave it to Kellen, he was kind of able to just focus on the team, focus on rallying the team. Kellen was able to focus on the X's and O's. So yeah, they both have had a massive impact this year. Moore at times is somewhat maligned, obviously coming from the Cowboys beforehand. There's going to be that little camaraderie, a little bit of a rivalry and scapegoating at times, but he's been a pleasant surprise so far this year. So I'm very content with both coordinators. I'm happy there's at least stability on one side of the ball, and hey, got to go out and win the Super Bowl tomorrow with Kellen Moore, and because afterwards he's staying there and he's going to be their head coach. So he's got to coach the game of his life tomorrow and just keep doing what he's doing, not getting complacent. And yeah, I value both coordinators very highly.
I remember last podcast we had, we talked about Nick Sirianni and just,
Right.
how people
Yeah.
view him, especially in the fan base. So,
Mhm.
what would a Super Bowl kind of do for his, I guess, legacy in Philly?
I would say it would immortalize him, which seems absolutely bizarre from the first half of the year. People were calling for his head. The end of last year, a lot of people wanted him fired. I was one of very few fans in our fan base who said, kind of give him time. You got to wait for the season to unfold. But it would put him up there. I believe so. There are still some fans who don't give him the full credit he deserves because he's inheriting such a great team and whatnot. And we've had for the last 20 years a pretty high standard of success amongst our team as a whole. But I would like to think he would be viewed as one of the greatest coaches of all time, if not the greatest coach. He's the only Eagles head coach to go to 2 Super Bowls. The prior Andy Reid, as great as he was, the all-time wins leader, the guy we're playing tomorrow, he only went to Super Bowl once, lost 4 times in an NFC Championship game. Um, kind of left a sour taste in our mouth. And then Doug Peterson, obviously, he had that uh, immaculate season in 2017, greatest season of franchise history. But it didn't pan out really for that much time after that. Sirianni has kind of the fate of the franchise in his hand for the next foreseeable future. He's 42, 43, I believe. And yeah, I think he will be immortalized. And we'll see if they do win tomorrow, if there will be more of that attitude of, oh, we got to go out and win another one, or if we'll just be content with what we have. Because the Super Bowls are not a guarantee. You can go there and you can never go back. So I think for him to rally the team, be able to kind of move on, I would say, from the Super Bowl loss 2 years ago and get them back to this position, I think is remarkable. And I think his legacy will be immortalized. If you win in the city, you will be beloved. If you win that championship, no one can take anything away from you from that. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that'd be
It's
amazing, man.
it's a tough city to win in. I will say that it's a tough city to get everyone's approval. Media's tough, fans are tough, but when you win, it's awesome.
100%. You know how I feel about Philly fans, but the
Yeah,
organization and all
you've
the
had
culture.
your experiences.
Yeah, I really appreciate the culture though, like the sports culture in terms of
Just
like how
passion.
they adore their fans. When you look at all these teams, 76ers, Flyers, Phillies, all that, Eagles, I mean, they all love their fans, but of course it's tough love, and that's
It's
just
tough.
what you
No,
get
it is
there.
tough love.
Yeah,
It's absolutely tough love. If you don't bring 110%, they're gonna let you hear it. Definitely.
exactly. And we saw it with Ben Simmons, like,
Oh
we
yeah.
see it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we do see it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, but of course, we're focused here on the game. So what would you
Yeah. Back to
say
the game.
are the keys to victory for the Eagles tomorrow?
So I would say again, it's been a pretty repetitive response throughout the podcast, but establishing the run is massive. I would love to get the ball first and then score first tomorrow. I think it would put all the pressure on the Chiefs to score that next drive to just be able to kind of balance out the offense or balance out the flow of the game. And you've seen Kansas City though fall behind several times in the last few Super Bowls, and we're still able to win. The Eagles are going to have to go out there tomorrow, and they're going to have to dominate the first half in case of the Chiefs making a comeback, kind of like last time, and you're going to have to weather the storm in the second half as well. So offensively, again, I think establishing the run is a huge faction of it, or a huge portion of it. Kind of being able to run a lot of mesh routes, confusing up the linebackers, which the Chiefs love to do. Running mesh routes, getting receivers open, I think, is another factor. But yeah, controlling time possession is a huge factor tomorrow. And then defensively, you have to be careful for the Chiefs having a man in motion before every play. You saw 2 years ago, Kadarius Toney and I forget who the other receiver was. They scored in the red zone at the 5-yard line on the same exact play that Jonathan Gannon did not adjust for. Yeah. It was that man in motion, running outwards, tossed to him. They won the Super Bowl last year on that same play that they ran 2 years ago. So the Eagles need to focus on pre-snap motion, kind of off-ball guarding of receivers, and that's critical. If you can shut that down and kind of let Isaiah Pacheco run a little bit, they can afford to let Pacheco get loose, run around a little bit. But you're going to have to contain receivers, I'd say, in that portion of the game. And for these playoffs, you've seen Patrick Mahomes really scrambling around and having success on the ground. I think Zach Bond's going to have to spy as well. It's a very tough offense to stop, but I think if you play a perfect game defensively, you can do it. And that starts with guarding the mesh routes really well tomorrow.
We'll see, man. Three-peat is on the line for the
Three-peat's on the line, yeah.
We'll see.
A lot of storylines heading tomorrow. Exciting, definitely.
For sure. Looking forward to
neutral, it. Obviously. I'm very nervous, but
of course, no. You have the right to be. I mean, that's your team. Yeah. It's going to be a big game. For your sake, I do hope the Eagles do come out on top and get that Super Bowl.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but that's everything we've got for today's podcast, episode 114 in the books. Chris, appreciate you coming on. We'll see what happens in the Super Bowl. And signing out. Peace.
Awesome. Thank you.